I met her actually at work. She was doing kind of a CE for our group. It was a Teams meeting, and she had so much good information. I reached out to her and just said, you know, do you speak? And she's like, I speak everywhere. I think all the time. That's all I do. So anyway, she is the healthcare executive now for A Place for Mom. And so she said she's just going to explain a little bit more about herself. And so welcome both.
Thank y'all for having me. Everybody's been so kind, but I am so informal, so please, if y'all make noise, I'm good with it, because I am not a public speaker by no means, but I do have, as part of my job, conversations all day long with families. So has anybody heard of A Place for Mom? Yes. I know, the one in the back there, he talked to me about it already. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit of what I do. So A Place for Mom is a placement. We help facilitate placement for those that need help at home, that maybe need assisted living, memory care, or long-term care. I do not place for skilled nursing or anything like that, but that's what A Place for Mom does as a whole. My specialty is I work with social workers and case managers in the hospitals and the rehab settings solely. Ann and I met because I was actually speaking to Vanderbilt, her case management team, on a Teams thing, just introducing myself and what I do, and she sends me referrals sometimes for some of her patients. And I think what I have learned throughout the years, and before this, so I'll explain, I've been with A Place for Mom now since October. Glenda Jordan was in my place before. Some of y'all may have heard of her name, but she retired after 20 years, so I've known her 17 years. I was in senior living before this, and she asked me if I would take her place. So I feel like she's been grooming me for 17 years for this job, but absolutely love it. There are so many people out there that have no idea what to do until they need to do it. And for me, I spend a lot of time talking people off the ledge, you know. A lot of patients and families are just either unprepared for the situation that they're in, thought they were prepared for the situation they were in, and just not knowing what resources are out there. Has anybody have had a loved one they had to help place somewhere? Right. Was it tough? Yes. Did y'all do it solely on your own? Or did you?
Through you.
I know. Yes. Yes, the gentleman in the back used A Place for Mom, and I appreciate that. But that's a rarity, really. A lot of people think that we charge. We don't. We're a free service to families and to patients. I feel like I do a lot of counseling all day, you know. So one of the things I had talked to Ann's group about that I said I would talk a little bit with you guys about too was just hard conversations, you know. I had sent an email out to a group of my social workers just saying hard conversations. Sometimes they have a hard time talking to their patients about options or feeling like they're crossing the line or they're getting too personal, you know. Sometimes it's hard for a social worker to tell a patient and their families she can't go home. You know, we've got to do something. Even though that's the best thing, sometimes they feel like they're crossing the line. And so they loop me in, and I meet them at the bedside or wherever and try to just talk them through that process of why it's a better solution, you know, than going back home. The number one thing that everybody wants to do is stay home, right? We all want to stay home. If I could keep everybody home safely, I think I would do it. One of the hardest things, though, is that paying for care at home is the most expensive form of senior living care that I provide. The most expensive. And majority of the people that are servicing the companies, they're not nurses. So it's not a medical professional, it's a caregiver through a company. They need medicines, they can't touch the medicines. They need help with a Foley catheter, they can't touch the Foley. So that's hard, you know? And I've actually had some family members, well, what can they do? They can sit with you. They can clean the house. They can do your laundry. They can make sure that you're being supervised. They can help you get up and down safely. Any medical care they cannot do. Medical care comes from home health, which is ordered by a doctor. So the medical piece is not found through there. Versus, and I will tell you this, that kind of care costs about $30 to $40 an hour to pay for somebody to sit. Assisted living runs you about $4,000 to $6,000, sometimes $8,000 depending on care. So if you look at that, usually some people are paying to stay at home about that much. So the main thing I kind of wanted to discuss was just senior living options, and having that conversation and recognizing sometimes it's just something that you don't want to talk about. I don't know if any of you have experienced this. I know you have there in the back, sir. Did any of y'all think we charged? Have y'all? Yes. I get that all the time. I see that. They're like, I see that lady on TV and the commercial. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Many times it's a dementia situation. And I don't know if y'all know this either, but in hospitals too, and I know Ann knows, a lot of times if you send somebody with dementia to the hospital because they can't go home or they can't be taken care of anymore, they go into an observation unit and they have to put a sitter with them because there's not any kind of lockdown or anything at a hospital that is safe for them. So then that puts more staff from the hospital on them, and it's an undertaking. And then you've got someone who is confused sitting in a hallway of a hospital with a sitter. So back to the hard conversations. There's a lot of ways that you can talk to a family member or you can talk to somebody about senior living. Keeping them at home, again, is the most expensive form of care. So there is a way to kind of determine when it's time for senior living in any shape or form. So there's a lot that comes into play. And I actually deal with a lot of people that don't have the finances either to be placed in any kind of afford home care, to afford any kind of assisted living. But basically you want to know, your family member or friends, health, finances, general preferences. For me, I'm thinking about it right now because I talked a wife off of the ledge today, and I was just telling Ann before we started speaking that I was talking to a wife who was like really trying to plan out the whole time her husband was coming home. I need this, I need the care, and can they come on the days? He's gonna have to go to dialysis 3 days a week, and in her mind it's just, and he's not even home yet. And I finally just said, how are you? Are you okay? Because I think sometimes we get into that and we don't even recognize it in our own families, of people that kind of need that support. And it's a scary thing. So I was going to kind of talk about too, just a little bit. Does anybody in here personally have anybody with dementia or know anybody with Alzheimer's or dementia? Yeah. It's a scary thing too to watch, isn't it? They're really trapped in their minds, and it's one of my favorites. When I worked in assisted living for years, memory care was my favorite part. It's just, even though they're confused, they still know how to love, they still know, they may not know who anybody is, but it's just a real openness. And there's that need, I guess, being a mom too, that you just want to care. And you feel like you got to protect them because nobody else is going to. So I've always kind of had, but it is one of the, I'm also on the board, I'll say this too, I'm also on the board of Alzheimer's Association as well for Tennessee. It's just a passion of mine, and I tell everybody all the time, I'm like, there's always somebody that knows somebody that's got dementia. That what I have seen over my 17 years is it's just not early diagnosis. Doctors wait a really long time to diagnose dementia. before I move forward, before we talk about this, does anybody have questions for me or anything that you want to know?
Do you only offer service to seniors?
No, good question. And I also get a question if we only help moms. we help men as well? No, we actually, anybody that needs care. I've helped people in their 50s, I've helped people in their 40s that have some kind of disability. Our specialty is senior living, of course, but we can also help. A lot of times, and people don't know this either, senior living communities like assisted living and stuff will take younger that just have like a disability or something that needs the care, the same type of care. So it's not always an age thing. But yes, that's a good question. So we will take. Yes, sir.
You all don't charge anything. How are you funded?
So we're funded by, good question. We're funded by assisted livings, memory cares, and home care companies that partner with us. So for instance, if I refer to a community that partners with us, because we only have access to refer to those that partner with us, then they pay a percentage of that move, of that referral that we send. But it's one time, and that's how we're funded. Anybody else? That's a good question though, because a lot of people ask that. They wonder now how we get. Okay, so I just have a quick little thing that I just kind of wanted to say as far as we have this little wonderful thing. I should have made copies of it, but I didn't. Just how to discuss senior living options with a loved one, or doesn't even have to be a family member, just anybody in general that kind of navigates having that hard conversation or just recognize when the need for it is. And of course, the first step is practice empathy and set up a time to talk. You know, it's just time. It's just time, just to make the time to have that conversation. Making sure it's at a location that's comfortable for them. Personal preferences, make it kind of personal to them. Limit who's involved. You know, you don't want to make it. You definitely don't want to make it where you're having a big old round table and everybody's just sitting there and they feel like they've done something wrong, you know. Second, be prepared. Kind of know what options are out there, which is why we come into play. If you don't know, I'll be happy to help. We'll be happy to help. Anything that we can do to make you feel comfortable. But I also, you know, if you don't want to have the hard conversation, I'm totally able to do it. And that's kind of what I do a lot of. So if you need me to have that conversation, I'll be happy to do it. And then of course, listen, stay engaged, positive tone, don't problem solve. I think the last thing that, especially if they have dementia of any sort, nobody wants to be told they're wrong or a combative, you know, or argumentative, you know, you're saying the wrong thing, or no, that's not what we're doing, or, you know, you just kind of roll with it. And of course, don't interrupt. I have kids, I get interrupted a lot. Step 4, and of course, you just want to end the conversation on good terms. You don't want them to feel like it's something that makes them feel backed into a corner, you know? Nobody wants to feel that way. And then plan for next steps. Hey, you know, and I always tell people too, if you get down to where you want to start touring places and looking at places, before you get them involved, I say tour as many as you want and narrow it down to 2 or 3, and then involve them and let them make that decision from those that you can live with. If you take them to all 5, it's going to be very overwhelming. It's just too much for them to do. Any questions about that? I'm just thinking in my head. Another thing too that we can help with, people don't know this either, is to know and recognize dementia, early signs of dementia, if any of that is happening or going on. Y'all got really quiet. Everybody's just like, yes, yes. Yes. Y'all can just get up and move around. You want to do some jumping jacks? I'm just kidding. So we do help with that. We definitely have many things, many resources. We do support groups. We do all of that stuff. I'm trying to think about what else I know 30 minutes is a long time. Ann? Yes, yes, ask. I thought y'all would have way more questions than this.
So, my experience has suggested that frequently when there's a family member
Yeah.
who is approaching that point where they need kind of this level of care. There's often camps inside the family
Yeah,
with some family members who are adamantly opposed,
adamantly, yes.
belligerently opposed, while there are others in the family who realistically see what's going on.
Mhm.
And it can be the other way as well. Some folks who are trying to
Right.
make that placement too soon. And there's often a lot of family tension around that.
A lot.
How much
Mhm.
do you get involved in sort of meeting with the parties, and sorting through what those issues are and trying to establish some détente and agreement around?
A lot.
plan?
He had asked me back there in the back, I can't remember your name, sir, in the green shirt back there.
Scott.
Yes, Scott. He asked me, he said, you know, if a family member of mine or whatever called a place for mom and they needed Franklin, Tennessee, would they get me? So no, they wouldn't. If you call that 1-800 number for a place for mom, you're not going to get me. So why that's viable to have like a local person is for that reason, because we are experts with the doctors and the social workers and all that, and so we can kind of rally and come together from a third-party perspective that's not intimidating. And sometimes when there's that conflict with family, you need an outsider that's not biased to say, hey, look, it's about this and this and this, not about how you feel about this or what brother didn't do when he was caring for her, or you know, sometimes it's like, hey, it's this. You know, she needs this, this, and this. They did this test, and this is what they show. And sometimes families don't. You know, I deal with people that are angry about it too. And I think sometimes it's approach. You got to be open to meeting them where they are, good or bad. But for me, it's having that local piece, because then I can back it up. But it's very important to. I think in your case, what that brings me to is a lot of people don't want to have a conversation because of that, because they're afraid to cause conflict in the family. I've got one right now that I'm working with that the family's estranged, meaning dad is married to stepmom, but he's my dad, and I'm working with the daughter for the dad. But the family for the stepmom thinks that this daughter is using, you know what I mean, taking advantage of mom to care for her dad. Yes. And it's like, well, we got to get past that. Two 97-year-olds shouldn't be taking care of each other at all. You know? So it's yeah. And you know, and she's like, well, I think I need to, you know, and then she's out of state, the daughter. And she's wanting to do what she's got to do to keep that family off of her back, when really probably dad needs more, probably a community, to be honest. Because if you can afford that kind of care, I think the argument between the families is that you're allowing my mom to take care of your father, who doesn't have it together either. And so instead of coming together as one, they're kind of like divided. And that happens a lot. And we have to come in the middle. And the daughter's really, you know, she's like, well, I live in Madison, Alabama. And you know, dad lives in Arrington, Franklin. I'm like, well, you might need to come to Arrington, Franklin and see what's going on instead of taking words for it. So yes, that happens a lot. It's yes.
Do you see any kind of generational shift going on here, where I'm just imagining, because 3 of our 4 parents, my husband and I, have had a need or are needing a tremendous amount of care. And I think for their generation, the families, they weren't like in small little pods. Everybody worked together and everybody stayed home and everybody rallied around them.
Yeah.
But now we have this aging population, and a lot of us are like moving away from our families of origin.
Oh yeah.
And at least my husband and I, we're just super clear with our kids on what to do with us while we still, you know, before we have any diagnosis.
Amen, sister. Yes.
So I wonder if that's going on, you know, throughout the country, that people are saying, go ahead and making these decisions instead of, while they have the power to make these decisions.
They are, and that's a good point, because if you wait too long, you can't make that decision. and it's not recognized by doctors. They won't sign off on it. It's not recognized by state either. So that is very good. Yes, there's a very short amount of time of when you can do that. What I'm seeing a lot of, and I've seen it probably in the last 10 years probably, is people are wanting to stay home longer against safety, just doing it, making it. The younger generation of our kids, even my age, with their parents, it seems to be like they're moving away, like you said, not from home, and they're bringing parents with them that have nobody but them, putting them in assisted livings or whatever close to them, or moving them in with them, and wanting mom to be babysitter for grandkids or whatnot when mom's not capable, a lot of times. And then it's like we've done that, we made that decision, we made that big move, moved mom with us, she lives with us, and now she's having some kind of aggressive behaviors. You probably tried to make something work that was never going to work to begin with. And now you've taken her out of a comfort zone. And a lot of people don't know this, and this is actually fact. The worst thing, for even me, for all of us, none of us like change, right? It's hard. It's just hard. The worst thing for an older, thriving person is to change their living situation. I tell everybody when they make a decision to move someone into in a community, period, it needs to be made one time. I don't like this care, and you're going to have your evil in all of them. None of them are perfect. I'm here to tell you, none of them are perfect. And if they tell you they are, I'd be even more skeptical if they make a lot of promises, because none of them are. I've been in a lot of them. And but you have to be able to be okay with your evil. You got to pick your evil, is what I say. If it's not the newest thing on the block, but the care is great, then there you go. That's perfect. If it's the newest thing on the block and it's shiny and very expensive and everybody's moving there, but then now everybody's moving out because they got all new staff, that's not going to be. And I have to tell families, like, that's the worst thing you could do for that person is move them. You're changing their environment, and they decline every time, every single time. And if you put somebody in memory care, it needs to be it. Because I have noticed that what no one wants to do anymore is work things out with people. So if the care is horrible and you've chose that community, at one time you loved it for mom, and they're doing something wrong, they need to fix it, And you're that advocate for that mom. So you need to make them fix it. A lot of times families think, oh, I put mom in memory care and I haven't seen her in a year, and I went and it's awful. You can't do that. You can't just put them in there and then never see them again. You gotta manage it. It's work. This is not for the faint of heart. It's work. It is work. But there's a lot of people that think, well, I did my due diligence. I put her in a place.
You mentioned early signs. What would you say are?
Got them. Memory loss for dementia? Okay. I've got stuff up here too if y'all want to take with you. But memory loss, of course, is one. Becoming lost, turned around. Difficulty with planning or organization skills. Having trouble finding the right words. A lot of this is me, okay? So don't freak out. Like, anxiety or depression are early signs. I'm actually going to read you this part because I think it's important. So it does say one thing: early signs of dementia can vary, of course. The above list the list I just read you may not apply to everybody with dementia either, though. Your loved one or yourself may notice something is off or beyond what is listed. Here's what I'm going to say. When you start noticing people change in habit, changing something they always did, okay? Post-it notes, writing stuff down and setting it because they're afraid they're going to forget. Change in behavior, big time, easily frustrated. Someone who has misplaced their keys on occasion, or their whole life. By comparison, someone who has never misplaced their keys and then suddenly starts to do it, though, is the problem. You kind of know, and you may be like, something's kind of been off with that person for a while, and I haven't really, you know, yes. I was going to say something else too. Hang on. I have a whole list too, but I don't want you to think like, oh, when you get home tonight, oh, I'm forgetful. Oh, I lose my keys every day. Brooke said, honey, I think I got dementia. Don't do that. So here's a good one. Yes, sir.
What did you just say?
Right. You need to work. We'll talk later. So how can you tell a difference between signs of dementia and signs of aging? Because that's a thing too. That's why I was like, y'all don't freak out on me here. So it can be difficult, as with mild cognitive impairment or early dementias that may look similar. If it is a concern and requires accommodations such as taking additional notes that I just talked about, parking in the same place, asking for assistance more often, or something is going on and should be checked out. There's also the possibility of a different condition mimicking dementia symptoms such as depression or a vitamin deficiency. Yes. So, what do you do if you have the signs for dementia? When it comes to concerns about your overall wellness, you know yourself better than anyone. If you feel something is off, it probably is. If you notice something is off with somebody else, it probably is. I'm going to tell you this little story. I had an aunt. She's still alive. I don't know why I said had. I have an aunt. And she was playing it off well. I never knew she had dementia, to be honest. Never knew. But what I did know is she was starting to drive her car. She was starting to have like wrecks, or like, not big ones, running into something. Or I had a baby and she was supposed to be coming to see me, and she called and said, oh, I can't. I just hit something, and come to find out, she ended up in the hospital and went to rehab, and her kids went into her house and there were sticky notes everywhere. She'd have a sticky note on the microwave that said, go check the sticky note in the bathroom. And in my mind, as I think about that, I think how smart that actually is. To know that. To be able to keep that up, I would not be able to keep that up. But it's like when she was in the moment, or in that microwave, she knew right then to write down. Has dementia, actually has Alzheimer's. So little things like that, little changes, purses in refrigerators, keys in unknown places. Just a lot of times, they can be smart too. And you don't really realize it, like I just said with my aunt. There is a baseline test. Doctors have that too. If you ever think you have it, you can ask for a baseline test. They can tell you. They can do one. If you do have a dementia diagnosis, or your loved one ends up with a dementia diagnosis, you may feel overwhelmed or feel all those emotions. For adult children, it can be especially challenging to accept that a parent or a loved one has been diagnosed with dementia. Take time to find support in this difficult time. You're not alone. I think that's probably the biggest message I really want to get across here to even you guys and to others that you may know, is that you're not alone. There is resources, and I think there's so many people that think there's not. I think you get into the mundane of the day-to-day, taking care and becoming a caregiver, and I'm here to tell you right now, if it gets way past manageable, you were meant to be that wife, that husband, that daughter, that son. You're not meant to be the caregiver to where it starts taking a toll on you. Because if it does, a lot of times they're like, well, I feel like I'm doing my wife a disjustice. I said I'd never put her into a place. But you also never said that you would lose your own self by taking care of her either. And I think that's the hardest thing, because I think there's so many that think that they're not doing right by their loved one if they make a decision. And a lot of us have this mentality of this vision of a nursing home. This 1980s style nursing home, those just do not exist. These assisted livings are just not like that anymore. It's just not out there. And I spend more time telling people that too, that it's not a nursing home. But I see so many people, so many loved ones that lose a piece of themselves, daughters that take on a job that they're not prepared to do, husbands that were with it and said, I can take care of my wife, she's got dementia. Do you know how much work that takes? It's a 24/7 job. I had one little 97-year-old man, loved him to pieces, and his wife was up all the time. He had to, like, pretty much got to a point where he tied something to him at night, like sheets, around him and her, because if she got up, that is not healthy for anybody. And it happens because he felt like he was the one supposed to do it. Any questions about any of that? I know, I'll get on this like blaming thing. I'm like, don't do it. I don't want to do that.
Do you ever do you go and meet like in people's homes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then is that sometimes maybe an opportunity?
Yes.
When you're in there to say, okay, this is really not safe, or,
Mm-hmm.
and so that gives you a little bit of, yes, just something that you can just say, just,
Oh, yeah. And a lot of times, and I was telling Ann this too earlier, I've even called Adult Protective Services in the driveway before, because I'm just like, I cannot leave here, But yes, I've done home visits. We'll do home visits because sometimes just coming to their level,
Not always leaving from a facility, it's just right. Yeah.
Yes, they're not always in a hospital. I feel like I made everybody sad.
No.
It's not the best news, I know.
Scott?
Yeah, I just would comment. One of the hardest things we had was trying to discern at the beginning what was normal memory loss
I know.
versus what was dementia, early dementia.
And the doctor probably didn't diagnose early.
The doctor didn't know, and of course she denied it. Oh, this is just normal. All older people, all people aging do it. And we felt that there was something just a little bit more, but there was no way to really prove it. And until we finally she got bad enough really that we went to a geriatric.
And a lot of times too, on top of that, a lot of times, a lot of them will go back and say, families, oh yeah, I did kind of remember some things in her past that I understand it now, makes sense now. And doctors aren't very helpful in this at all because dementia is not a diagnosis, it's a condition. So, and a lot of times they'll lump everything into dementia way later. But fatigue, there's this thing called sundowning. It's where they get their days and nights mixed up. So they're up all night, but they sleep all day. I have a father-in-law right now. My mother-in-law is 73, her husband's 78, and she takes care of him. And she's finally learned that majority of his symptoms are all under the dementia umbrella. He has all of this, and sometimes he thinks he's having these conditions like pains that he doesn't have. But it's all part of that one thing. A crisis too, like that's kind of what they say that brings this on too, is like they may have a life event. Maybe they went to I'll use an example. They go to the dentist, they get a fill-in. Well, maybe that fill-in gets into their bloodstream because the infection. And then they've got to be on antibiotics and all that. Well, then we're older, so it takes longer for that infection to get out of our system. Then we have a reaction to that antibiotic, right? So then we're hospitalized at that point. Well, that's just shock to the entire system, your entire body, and you're 78 years old. Just imagine. That's an event that could definitely cause the onset of dementia. And so then they'll come out of that and they're not the same, or they're confused, or Now, I'm not saying everybody in this room is going to get dementia either. I do not want y'all going home thinking I'm diagnosing everybody in here. But it's good to know, though. It's good to know. It's good. It's just good information. I just want to be a resource giving you information.
What is the prevalence? I mean, how many of us in this room are gonna get it?
Who said, how many of in this room probably have it?
Scott, we gotta look at age groups.
I was looking around, I was like, they probably think I am like pre-diagnosing. I am not doing that.
Jay, you had 80, it's 30 to 40%.
That's the biggest risk factor. Living to be old.
Yeah.
40% of people I deal with have it. 40% of people I place. Yes, sir.
This may not be something you can answer, but I'll just throw it out. This group is, with Stephen Ministers and
I know, yeah.
caregivers
Yeah.
with whoever comes into our system. And if we are working with someone and we sense either they have dementia, and that's not what we're working on, or somebody that they're caring for has it, and we have a confidential relationship, what are your suggestions for how we provide better relationship for our care receiver
Call me.
in a case like this,
Call me.
even with the confidentiality?
Or if you're okay, all I need is you just to ask them if it's okay. And I can come with you. I don't need to be like on my own to go see them.
And just to put in a plug for supervision groups, that's something that supervision groups are great to, it's great to discuss that in your check-in statement. And an in-depth, the supervision group can sort of provide some input.
And even if it's,
I wouldn't go beyond,
no.
But I mean, if you get there,
Here's the thing, that person that you know and you see it way ahead of time and they end up in the hospital, I'm gonna get it anyway, probably, So if I can help early on, if I can help early on, I wanna help early on and just bridge that gap. And it may be that they don't even need anything at the time, it's just a conversation. And I'm happy to do that too, at any point.
I think one of the people I had referred to you, I spoke with two of the daughters.
I did.
And I think they wanted to know, what is out there, what is, if we get to this point. And you had the conversations. And
Yes.
I think it ended up working out, but I think that just helps you say, well, how are you taking care of yourself? Just talking through it with you, or somebody,
And I think sometimes that's the thing is that I realize it's not really me. So what I do, what I love about your ministry group, is that's what I think I'm doing. I feel like it's a ministry. I think sometimes they just need someone to hear them. Not every single person I talk to I place because I can't, either finances or just maybe that's not what they need, or I was the wrong person that they called, but I answered the phone and I just listen and I just talk to them. But yeah, anybody that's in your area, in your group or anything that you see, I'll be happy to assist them. My fear is that so many people are out there that just think there's not support. That they think, oh, I don't have finances, or I don't have anything, so I'm just supposed to deal with this. That's not true. And we want to give them that support.
Any other questions for Brooke? Go ahead.
Yes.
Question.
Yeah.
Something like this happens in our family. Extended family members were seeing a lot of the signs you mentioned, but we were sort of hesitant to jump in and speak to the children because they were busy. They had young children of their own. They didn't see their mother that often, didn't talk to her that often just because life got in the way. But everybody else, her friends included, were seeing it. So is it appropriate? I mean, we were all hesitant, but was that the wrong thing to do? Eventually, they got on board and figured it out, and they're doing well, taking care of her now. But it probably should have happened a little bit earlier than it did. So,
But you probably didn't know what to say either. So that's the thing, is like, it could have been sometimes, and I get told that a lot, is that they just hand my card and like, hey, if you ever need help, she can help you. And sometimes it's not even a conversation, it's just recognizing that, hey, something's going on and if you need help and I'm not that person because of the family dynamic, sometimes just giving them information. Hey, if this gets to be too much, Brooke can help you or somebody can help you. That's sometimes all it is. I understand how you felt in that though. It's hard. It's hard because you don't want to overstep bounds, with family.
or create more problems.
Or stay out of my business. Yeah, right? Right. Thank y'all.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Let's do a fun.